everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
Welcome to Coffee Talk. We are your hosts, Southborough Youth and Family Services, and we're so excited to be with you again this morning. I am the Director of Southborough Youth and Family Services, Sarah Castle, and with me this morning we have Megan Island, who's our Assistant Director. We are very pleased to have our co-host, Lisa Avery Peck, with us this morning. Lisa is one of our graduate clinicians with us for the year. Shannon Knyman, our program coordinator, isn't able to be with us this morning. She's very diligently working on a training. Shannon, if you're keeping one eye on Coffee Talk this morning, good morning, we miss you. And we are so happy to invite Rachel Matos with us this morning from Voices Against Violence. We're going to hear from Rachel in a few minutes about Voices Against Violence and the very important work that they do. But let's start with our traditional cheers. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome. Thanks
Good
for joining
morning.
us. Rachel has the most gigantic coffee cup we've ever seen.
For size, this is a comparison to my head.
Yes. What did you say earlier? It fits how much coffee?
This fits half a pot.
Half a pot.
So about 6 cups.
Oh my goodness. I wonder if you're routinely drinking that much coffee. Has it become a morning? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm ashamed to say, but yes.
Well, sometimes you need it, you know.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I used to have 2 cups a day, and then at some point I stopped, and now if I have more than one, I get like jittery, and I don't know what's happened to me, but I wish I could have 2 again. I really do enjoy driving to work with a cup of coffee, but what can you do? Anyway. Well, Rachel, we're so happy to have you on the show today. We actually want to thank Lisa. Lisa, you have done some work with Voices Against Violence and had made us aware of the agency and the very important work that they do. And we'll talk with Rachel in a minute about the services, but domestic violence is something that we have had on our radar for a long time. It's always been an issue, but especially when things closed down during the beginning of the pandemic. And we also wanted to invite Rachel to come on before we get ready for winter months, when we're probably, even I think under normal circumstances, are in our houses a lot more, closed in our houses because of the colder weather and shorter hours of daylight. And so we thought this was a very important topic to discuss here on the show and make people aware of this really wonderful agency that's so close to our own community, and just highlight some of the issues that individuals who are in domestic violence relationships face. So, Rachel, maybe we'll start with, if you could tell us more about what is Voices Against Violence. Sure. And what are the services that are provided there?
Sure. So Voices Against Violence, we're a dual agency. So we provide services for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. And we know that both domestic violence and sexual assault have kind of a range of different behaviors that exist, from sexual harassment to unhealthy relationships, to, the kind of more obvious and universally accepted as wrong behaviors such as rape. So we kind of work along a spectrum of behaviors to provide services, not only to survivors, but their family members and their friends and their loved ones as well. And so some of those services that we provide directly include supportive counseling. So we're working to kind of navigate through the healing process, navigate through the trauma It's different than therapy, but those sessions can take place weekly, they can take place bi-weekly, monthly, kind of whatever the survivor needs. We can also provide court accompaniment. So that could include helping somebody fill out a restraining order, kind of navigate through the criminal justice system, which is really complex. We also have support groups. So we like to put an emphasis on peer-to-peer support with one another, where survivors can really feel like they're not alone. Because that's something clients will tell us all the time, it's that they feel alone. And so those support groups are really validating in letting them know that they're not alone in their experience. So that's kind of the first piece of our mission statement. It's to provide direct services to survivors. The second piece of our mission statement is to provide outreach and prevention education. And so we have a team who can go out into schools, we can go to salons, police departments, fire departments, and really train people on a whole range of different topics, from healthy relationships to how to intervene in a situation, to how to practice media literacy. All of our services are free, confidential, and available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. We really want to knock down any of the barriers, transportation barriers. We can assist with housing barriers. We can assist with, we work in 14 different communities. And so Southborough is one of them. We have a map of all those 14 different cities and towns on our social media. If anybody who's out there listening is thinking that maybe they have a friend in Stowe, well, we cover Stowe. Maybe you have a family member in Maynard, we cover Maynard. So we post that map of where we're working on our social media.
Great. That was going to be a follow-up question that I had, was who is eligible to work with you guys. So it sounds like the communities that you serve, and I imagine that if it was somebody outside of Voices Against Violence catchment area, that you guys might have resources for other agencies that might be able to help.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. We work with anybody who's over the age of 14 years old. And if somebody is calling us from Worcester, a town that we don't cover, we can find their local domestic violence or sexual agency and kind of provide a warm handoff so that they can seek out services in their community. And in Massachusetts, there's a domestic violence and sexual assault agency for every single city and town. And there's a great tool it's called Jane Doe Program Search, where you can just plug in your zip code and find out the service or the service area. That's super helpful.
Yeah, that's great. I'm writing some notes as we go, because I'd like to, as a follow-up to this show today, share some of these resources that you're mentioning. And I know that you have some also that you were going to share with us. So I'm sorry, I'm completely going off script here, ladies. I had some other questions that I wanted to say. I completely missed this. Rachel's the outreach and prevention manager for Voices Against Violence, and I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that. So this is what she does. She's out there connecting with communities. The other thing is, where are you guys located?
So we're in Framingham at 7 Bishop Street. Right now we are operating fully remote. I should have said that in the beginning. We're fully virtual. We made that transition back in March. And so all of our services have been adapted to virtual services. And so if anybody's interested in learning more, I'd say the best place to start would be calling our 24/7 hotline, 365 days a year, holidays. Somebody is always answering that and always available to assist clients or callers.
Great, thank you. Ladies, I'm done with my off-script questions here.
Rachel, can you tell us a little bit about what domestic abuse looks like? What exactly is it for some people who might not know what it looks like?
Sure. So I think language is a really big piece of it. oftentimes when people hear domestic violence, they think, okay, domestic, that's happens in the home, it happens in the house. Maybe it's a married couple. Violence, we think of physical. And so that alone can be kind of restricting to some people. Maybe a teenager would think, well, I'm not married, I don't live with this person, so that doesn't apply to me. Whereas, the definition of domestic violence is really rooted in power and control. It's when one person has and gains and maintains power and control over their partner. So there's an imbalance there. And what I often talk about, to really kind of break it down, is the wave of violence. Some people may have heard it called the cycle of abuse, and it's kind of similar. But the wave of violence really, I'm trying to model what it would look like as I was teaching it. So this is kind of what it would look like, the wave. And so kind of at the bottom of the wave, we have tension that starts to build. And so the victim in that relationship may feel like they're walking on eggshells. And as you kind of go up on that wave, as that tension continues to build, once you get to the top of that wave, you have an incident, a violent incident. And it doesn't always have to be physical. It could be an argument. It could be, them saying something manipulative towards them. But, really the crux of that is to gain that power and control. And then after you have that violent incident, you go back down the wave, and you have what's called the hearts and the flowers phase. And I'm sure you can think of something that an abuser would say during that time. They would say, I'm so sorry for doing that to you. I promise it will never happen again. I swear I'm going to change. And the victim in that relationship really believes that they're going to change. And we call that kind of like the hope for change. And that can be why somebody wants to stay in that relationship, because they love their partner and they want them to just change and be better. And kind of after that hearts and flowers phase, as we're kind of at the bottom of the wave, we have the same old stuff phase. So things kind of just go back to the status quo. But then tension starts to build back up. And oftentimes the violent incident that follows is more severe than the prior incident. And so why I think the wave is so important to talk about is because, violent incidents or violence, physical violence, it doesn't occur on the first date. If it did, then there wouldn't be a first date. Control doesn't happen on the first date, right? If there did, there wouldn't be a second date. And so it takes time, and it can be really hard to get out of that wave because of kind of all these factors that go into these violent relationships.
So Rachel, just following up on what you just described, how do we recognize the subtler signs of domestic violence and abuse? And what are some of the red flags or the subtle signs that we can share?
Yeah, sure. So as loved ones or somebody who's kind of looking into the relationship from an outside perspective, I would say, a relationship that starts really, really quickly, maybe they're moving in with each other within the first 2 weeks or the first month of knowing each other. And then they slowly become isolated from their friends and their family. I would definitely pay attention to that. And just because a relationship moves quickly doesn't mean that it's abusive, but it is something that we do see pretty often. So again, the isolation piece there, what abusers will do is they'll say things that are really subtle. So they'll say things like, oh, you spend every weekend with your sister. Can we just hang out, just us two this weekend? I'll take us out to a really fancy dinner. Oh, you spent time with John last week. Why do you have to spend time with him? I just really want to be with you. Until it gets to a point where they're so isolated that they can no longer reach out for help. And as friends and family members, that can be really hard. Because if we don't know what's going on in that relationship, we can just think, oh, they're just so obsessed with their partner and they don't care about us anymore. So, it can be really hard as outsiders, but definitely something to pay attention to. I would say another big one is always having to check in with their partner. So maybe you're spending some time with them and you ask if they want to go out to dinner and they're kind of nervously like, I need to check in with my partner. I need to make sure that we have nothing to do. And it's not just one of those like, oh, let me see if me and my partner have plans. It's like more of a nervous checking in for permission type of checking in, is what we're really talking about here. And you can kind of get that sense when you're talking with somebody, when it's kind of over that line. And then I would say too, like extreme jealousy is a big one. And of course, unexplained injuries, unexplained illnesses, not coming to events at the very last minute, just like continuing to bail on time spent together or parties or events. Something that abusers will do, it's a tactic that they use, is they'll start fights right before, so that they have to miss those events. It's a method of control. And so, again, as outsiders, it's hard to recognize all of that, but those are just some of the things that we can kind of be on the lookout for.
Thanks, Rachel.
So I guess for anybody who is feeling worried about someone, maybe a family member or a friend or a child of theirs, who maybe see some of those signs that you were just talking about, or just worries, doesn't know, because like you said, sometimes it's a matter of this person's becoming really isolated. What can someone do if they're worried about someone they care about?
Yeah, so I have a couple things that I want to highlight here. And the first, really being able to check in with that partner. And like I said, it can be really frustrating if our loved one gets into this new relationship and we feel like they don't want to talk to us anymore. But really checking in with them and not just saying like, oh, how's Janice, or how's Mikey, right? But like getting into a deeper conversation with that person. Like, I noticed that you don't spend as much time with your friends and you used to spend so much time with them. Kind of asking those deeper questions. So we have this concept of the relationship paradox. And it's when people kind of put their most perfect selves out there on social media. And it's kind of this point of validation, seeking validation from others. And so people will put, these pictures on there that they look really, really happy with their partner. And they may be in a very abusive relationship. But when all these people are commenting, you guys are couple goals, you guys are so cute together, and kind of it validates that maybe they are in the right relationship, rather than seeking out, well, let's go deeper than this, right? Like, let's talk about how you actually are. So that's something that I would pay attention to and kind of just be mindful of, like with this kind of age of social media, to kind of check in a deeper way. If somebody is disclosing that they are in an unhealthy relationship, definitely believing what they have to say in a non-judgmental way. In kind of our culture, we have this tendency to not believe. We have this tendency to ask probing questions like, why did you do this? Why are you staying with them? If they're hurting you, then why wouldn't you just leave, right? And that can be invalidating to a survivor. So, believing their story, and just kind of asking deeper questions without being judgmental. So avoiding kind of those examples that I was just saying. is going to be really, really helpful for them.
Mhm.
You're going to be a person that they can trust and that they can go to if they need you.
Mhm.
And I would say the final thing would be, we don't want to tell survivors what to do. They are already being told what to do by their abuser. They are already being controlled by their abuser. We never want to mimic that behavior by saying, you need to leave, you need to pack your stuff, you need to get out, I'm going to the police and filing a restraining order on your behalf. It's not going to be helpful, and they're not going to leave until they are ready to leave.
Mhm.
Leaving can be one of the most dangerous times in an abusive relationship because it severs that power and control. And so we have to understand that, and let them navigate and kind of empower them. They're the ones that know their relationship the best. And so really providing them with choices, and again, not telling them what to do. And of course, referring them to the right places. So you don't need to be an expert as a family member, as a friend. You don't need to be the expert in navigating this situation that may be new to you. There are experts out there. You can call somebody from Voices Against Violence to help navigate. You can tell them, hey, I met this great advocate from Voices, and they have a lot of experience working with people who are in similar situations to you. Maybe we can call them together. So I would say kind of all of those things wrapped up. We really would just want to empower people, and not tell them what to do, and believe their stories.
Mhm. Mhm. I was just thinking to myself, as if I were a friend who was trying to help my other friend, that perhaps not expecting that that more in-depth conversation, or even the first time somebody opens up about a situation they may be in, that by listening non-judgmentally, believing what they have to say, that you become somewhat of a friend lifeline. You want to continue to be a person that friend can go to,
Mhm.
and that maybe it's an evolution, that maybe as friends we need to be patient and
Mhm.
expect that this may help over time. It might be hard
Yes.
for us to be patient when we see such a difficult thing going on.
Mhm.
Does that sound
Yeah.
right? That it's a, sort of if you want to be a friend to help, that you need to be patient and, continue to be there for the person, and that maybe, that over time it's going to be the most helpful to them.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I like how you worded it as kind of being an evolution,
Mhm.
because there aren't going to be instant results, right? The
Mhm.
first time that they're going to disclose to you, they're often not going to just like leave the relationship
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
day. Think about how hard it is to go through a normal breakup,
Mhm.
where there is no abuse. Like, that's really hard. And then
Mhm.
you compound that with abuse and control. It makes it so much harder.
Mhm.
And so, as outsiders, just thinking about that, and having patience, which I totally understand is so hard as a friend. Um, but practicing that can really help in the long run.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So Rachel, I was wondering how members of our community might be able to get involved. What kinds of volunteer opportunities are available at Voices?
So we're very flexible with the opportunities that people can get involved in. So we just had our Purple Passion 5K walk and run. It was completely virtual. But if somebody is interested in hosting a fundraiser, that's a way that they can get involved. Maybe they want to, host like a book club, and buy a certain book and then donate those proceeds. That's a way that people can get involved. We are oftentimes collecting donations of clothes, of furniture, of diapers, toiletries, all things that our clients are utilizing. So that's another way. And then of course, a more structured way to get involved would be to volunteer with us. So we have a lot of different volunteer opportunities. But I would say that our need right now is for volunteers to answer our support line. When we transitioned to remote services, we were able to answer our support line out of the office and to our cell phones. So we now work with an answering service who can transfer to a personal number. It's encrypted, so they would never have your personal number. But I think, Lisa, as you remember, if in the past, if folks wanted to volunteer and answer the support line, they had to come into the office and physically sit there. And so now we've transitioned that so people can answer it from their houses. And it's just much more accessible to people, especially on those overnight shifts. And so that's a big need of ours. And pretty similar to that, we still provide medical advocacy over the phone to people. So if a survivor has experienced a sexual assault and they are going to the hospital to get a sexual assault exam, we can support that client over the phone. And so again, those are shifts that we can transfer to somebody's cell phone and they can answer within the comfort of their own home. So those, I think, are our two biggest needs. And if anybody is interested in those opportunities, they can reach out to me. And I'm sure we can share some contact information after this. But I would be the best person to reach out to for those.
Great. I wonder if anybody watching this would say, I would love to help, but I don't feel at all qualified to do this work. Do you guys provide any training for volunteers?
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisa went through that training.
Yeah.
And so we have a 40-hour training, and that 40-hour training would equip folks to work throughout the state. So they can work at a different organization. That 40-hour training, it's kind of, it transfers within the state of Massachusetts, which is really cool. So what that 40-hour training equips people with, it's the skills to become an advocate. How can we practice active listening? How can we understand immigration in our country and how that will affect our clients? How can we understand the criminal justice system and how that affects our clients? How can we understand the role of media and the role of movies and TV shows as they relate to gender-based violence? So we really spend a lot of time on content in that 40-hour training, and then we set people up to shadow advocates doing the work. So we're not just throwing them into it, but they're getting the opportunity to see how it's done, see what it looks like, and be able to ask the advocate any questions that they may have. And so that opportunity to work one-on-one with an advocate is really beneficial to answer any of those questions that they have before, really starting the work on their own.
That's great. That's great. Well, Rachel, thank you very much. Our 30-minute show is not nearly enough for this very important topic. Again, we wanted to provide information for people on how to access help if they are in an unhealthy or difficult relationship, and also let people know how they can help. Again, we're always concerned about domestic violence and domestic abuse. We're especially, there's some additional challenges with people being quarantined and being at home with their family members. And domestic violence and abuse affects all of us. It doesn't discriminate between, one person or type of people. So it affects all of us. And, Voices Against Violence is an excellent resource for survivors, but for us as a community. So Rachel, we're so appreciative of you coming on, and we're really happy to share some of the resources that you mentioned. And I've already started talking with Rachel about whether we could have Voices come back for some additional community training, as it's such an important topic. So thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Next week, we are having John Madelman. John Madelman, what do we say about John Madelman? He's like a jack of all trades. John is a former youth and family service director for the town of Needham. I hope I have that right, John. It's been a while since I've last seen you and talked to you. But John supposedly retired from that position, and now I feel like could potentially be busier than ever. He's doing a number of presentations on youth and supporting youth mental health. He works with parents, he does consulting. So we're really excited to have him on the show next week, which is October 6th. And we will be talking with him about supporting our young people, and specifically around the topic of anxiety. Honestly, we're all experiencing levels of anxiety these days. So I think it will be a really helpful conversation. So we're looking forward to that. And thank you all for tuning in today, and we'll see you all next week.